So last week, we sat down and talked several times about the loaded weekend Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns had out in front of them as the Longhorns were hosting several of college football's top prospects. Today, we need to talk about how it did not take long for Sark and the Longhorn staff to convert visits into commitments, something we need to dive into. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no, and we're going to start this video off with a question similar to one I asked all of you last week. Do you believe the Texas Longhorns recruiting class is about to surge? And let me know the name you're watching for next. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below, as those interactions seem small. They are massive to content creators such as myself, and both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. And we are so close to our 20,000 subscriber goal. I'd love to have you a part of this unbelievable community. But having said all that, let's dive right into it. And both of the commitments Texas walked away with from this weekend are on the offensive side of the ball. Both commitments are guys that have got to excite the Texas Longhorns fan base. And we're going to start in the running back room, where Texas had already gotten a big win for a running back not long ago. But Tashard Choice continues to show what an elite recruiter he is, as he doubles down, getting top 50 player in the nation regardless of position, a top 3 running back in the nation, Jerrick Gibson, who plays his high school football for IMG. And before we really start diving into this, that's where I want to start, because we talk about this several times. Whenever you get a player that plays for a team like an IMG, if you're a Texas fan, that has to excite you. This is a guy that has already embraced the mindset of competition, because that's exactly what he faces at IMG week in, week out, not only in practices, but certainly in games. Anytime guys come from those type of situations where they are already used to competition, they're already used to playing against guys that will be playing football on Saturdays, you like their ability to make that transition. And furthermore, whenever we ask the question, what can Jerrick Gibson do well? An easier question to ask and answer is, what can't he do well? This is a very gifted running back, and I know Texas fans everywhere are happy that they not only get a Jerrick Gibson, they double down and get a Christian Clark out the state of Arizona, a state that's treated the Longhorns very well. And we really need to turn our attention to Tashard Choice, because Choice, though young, has already shown college football fans who are paying attention he is a name to watch. Though he hasn't been a coach for very long, really got his coaching career started with UNT as a graduate assistant in 2017. In 2016, he was an intern with the Dallas Cowboys. He began as a running back coach in 2018 with UNT, moved from there to Georgia Tech, where he ended up playing college football, was a running back coach at Georgia Tech from 2019 to 2021, and then from there he inherited the Texas Longhorns running back coach job. The rest is history. But if we look at the guys he's been able to recruit, I mean, it's very impressive. He has 1 5-star in CJ Baxter. He has 3 top 100 prospects that rank as running backs in Baxter, Jerrick Gibson and Jahmyr Gibbs. He has 4 top 300 prospects that were running backs, the same list as above, just add in Christian Clark, and he has 7 running backs that have rated as a 4-star or higher per the 24/7 Sports Composite. All of that in a really small time frame, painting the picture I'm trying to show you all. This guy can really recruit. This is a name you've got to keep up with, and Texas fans everywhere have to be very excited that he coaches for the Longhorns. I talk about this all the time with other coaches, and this line of logic certainly applies to Tashard Choice. If you're a running back sitting in your living room and in walks a coach like Tashard Choice that can look at you and your parents and say, hey, I've been exactly where you are. I went through this process. I went through the process of getting recruited. Then I made the jump from high school football to college football, where I found success. After that, I made the jump from college football to the NFL, where I also found success. Now I've found success in coaching. So every avenue I've involved myself in the realm of football, I've found success. That's a compelling pitch if you're a kid in high school wondering, where should I go? Which coach should I trust myself with? Sure, Steve Sarkisian, brilliant offensive mind, but if I'm a running back, I'm going to be working with the running back coach really closely. Who is that individual? Well, if it's a Tashard choice, like I said, that's a compelling pitch because he has an understanding. You know, this guy has done exactly what I want to do, and he's helping guys get to the next level. If we look at the year he just had with Bijan Robinson, that speaks for himself. And I know Bijan is an incredible running back, but if we look at the guys that Choice has recruited, it's clear he has got an eye for talent, and he is a coach we have got to keep an eye on because I think he's a bright young star in the college game. But we need to keep on the offensive side of the ball because Texas was not done, far from it. Kyle Flood continues to flex his muscles on the recruiting trail, something we've talked about time and time again, something we're going to continue talking about. Because interior offensive lineman Nate Kibble from the state of Texas has decided to stay home and will play his college football for Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns. And Nate Kibble is a guy that comes in as the number 430 prospect in the nation and the number 26 interior offensive lineman. And I say this all the time, you can never have too many offensive linemen, especially when we're talking about the position that the Texas Longhorns found themselves in not long ago, where this current staff has really come in here and done a total switch on the approach of how they're going to recruit. One of the areas I've remained steadfast in, whether we're talking about the live streams, whether we're talking about these videos, is I have faith in the Texas coaching staff, and one of the reasons I have faith is the way they've recruited. It's totally different than the way previous Texas staff has recruited, and I always liken this to eating a meal. Previous Texas staff, they would just be loading up a bunch of carbs, a 5-star here, a 5-star there, a 5-star there, and at the end of the year, you look at their recruiting class, and if you just looked at where they ranked and the amount of stars they were able to bring in, you'd sit there and say, that's a really good recruiting class Texas just brought in, and you wouldn't be holistically wrong. But if you took a look at that recruiting class, it wasn't comprehensive. It didn't make a whole lot of sense in terms of building a football team. The way Steve Sarkisian and this staff recruit, well, this is building a healthy, substantial meal. You have your meats, you have your vegetables, you have your starch, you have your grains, everything that a healthy meal requires. That's exactly what this Texas staff is getting you. And that's one of the reasons why I am excited for what the future will hold for Steve Sarkisian, especially this year. But now let's focus back in on Nate Kibble. Because as I stated, you can never have too many offensive linemen. Before Steve Sarkisian and Kyle Flood got there, that plagued the Texas Longhorns. A lack of depth at the offensive line, something they've really addressed in the few years Steve Sarkisian has been there. And the name we need to talk about is Kyle Flood. We dove into Coach Choice, and deservedly so. He is a bright young coach in college football. Kyle Flood is a name college football fans everywhere have got to know. And if you weren't already aware of who Kyle Flood is, you're going to be aware. He was a real big piece for Rutgers' offensive line, making real big changes. He was great for the Alabama Crimson Tide offensive line in both getting in talent and coaching that unit, and now we see the results of him at Texas, where the Texas offensive line has not only done a complete 180, done a complete turnaround, the talent present in the room should excite Texas fans everywhere, and they continue to add in talent in that room. I've told you about the 5 stars Kyle Flood has recruited in these live streams, but he continues to impress on the recruiting trail. Not long ago, whenever he was the offensive line coach at Alabama, he pulled in an offensive line class that I thought was so elite, I challenged all of you to find me an offensive line class that you liked more from a stars perspective. Not talking about how they would transition, because we couldn't tell that then. It was when they had first signed. But I challenged all of you to give me a recruiting class in which a college had signed a deeper unit of offensive linemen. It was tough to do. Until Kyle Flood moved the next season, went to Texas, and signed a class that could directly compete with the one he just signed for Alabama. The one he just signed for Alabama had 2 5-stars, the nation's number 1 center and the number 2 guard in the nation. That was really hard to beat. He goes to Texas, 2 5-stars, and multiple other blue-chip offensive linemen all along the line. Very, very successful. And oh yeah, by the way, one of those guys, Kelvin Banks, who came in as a true freshman and has not looked back and is going to be a huge piece for the Texas Longhorns moving forward. So this was a huge weekend for the Longhorns, but let's get one thing clear. I don't think this is where it ends. I think this is where it just begins, as Texas and Steve Sarkisian are coming off of back-to-back massive recruiting weekends where they've been able to lay a foundation. Recruiting is like building a house. It's all well and good if you start with a solid foundation, something this staff has been able to do. So I'm super excited to see what wins come next. And if you're asking me for names I'm going to be watching for closely, I'm going to bore you, but they are names that I think are important. I'm looking at guys such as a Dominic McKinley because Texas has a need along that interior of the defensive line. Can you get a win over LSU and Oklahoma for a very talented defensive lineman? Something we've got to watch. What about Colin Simmons, the number one edge in the nation, the number one player in the state of Texas? We know what the edge position means to this PK defense. He's coming off of a Texas visit where, by all reports, he very much well enjoyed his time there. In fact, on 3 is logging predictions in Texas's favor for him to commit there, something we have got to watch, but we know what LSU has been able to do in this recruiting battle. Texas is trying to make up the ground. We're going to have to keep a close eye on it. Then we look at a Terry Busey, who's in between a Texas, Oklahoma, among others. That's another battle we've got to watch. I talk about it all the time. Bitter rivals are going after the same prospects. Sign me up. That's recruiting battles that I want to be following. There's a lot of excitement out in front of us, and recruiting is really just getting started, and I can't wait to cover it all. Hop down to the comments and let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See you.